David Scott and James Irwin became the 7th and 8th men to walk on the moon. After an early reconnaissance on foot, Scott and Irwin became the first astronauts to drive on the surface of the moon. Using a lightweight, battery-controlled lunar roving vehicle, they were able to explore a much wider area than had been possible before. Amazingly clear pictures of the liftoff were transmitted back to Earth. The mission was an unqualified success, even though one of the 3 parachutes failed to open on re-entry.
And the recovery helicopter with their 3 Navy flagmen aboard now moving into position. What a beautiful sight. And there was impact, splashdown, and you could hear the cheering of the men on the ship.
It was later revealed that the crew had taken with them 400 unauthorized postal cover envelopes, in addition to the 250 official ones. These they sold to a German businessman, and when the story leaked out, they were reprimanded and removed from their assignment as backup crew for Apollo 17. Their careers as astronauts were effectively ended.
And you can hear some applause on the deck of the ship. This is probably the roughest ride he's had in the last few weeks. Soft landing. Our Royal Okinawa.
At the Paris Air Show, the Russians introduced their supersonic airliner, which immediately became known as Konkordsky. The Tu-144 was the most spectacular of a range of other Russian and American aircraft on display, including the giant C-5 Galaxy, then the largest military transport in the world. The show was opened by the French president, Georges Pompidou, who visited Konkordsky. Among those who inspected the Anglo-French Concorde was the former American presidential candidate, Senator Barry Goldwater.
I speak as an American citizen regarding this rather unusual development by the French and the British. We in America have always prided ourselves in leading the world in technology, and the thing that surprised me since I've been in Paris and been talking to businessmen and industrialists and flight engineers has been the fact that I find that most people over here believe that the United States has now, through refusing to build the SST, given up on technology, that we've given up our desire to stay ahead of the rest of the world. And I hate to say this, I'm afraid you're a bit ahead of us now, and if my country doesn't wake up to the dreadful mistake we made in not building the SST, I think I can safely prophesy that within this decade, the United States will no longer lead the world in airframe manufacturing. And I have to take my hat off to those people who have built the Concorde, both British and French. I've been through the speed of sound 3 times the speed of sound, so many times I've lost count of it. But I'm impressed that such a big airplane will go through so easily, and really with not all the power it will ultimately have, There'll be many improvements made in this before the passengers fly in it, but you've made a great step forward, to paraphrase what one of our astronauts once said.
Concorde continued its flight testing, and a number of British cabinet ministers made their first flight in the supersonic airliner. Not everyone, though, was in favour of Concorde. The Labour MP, Tony Benn, flew to New York to continue Britain's fight against a proposed anti-noise bill.
The bill does require airline companies to meet fair deadlines for the installation of mufflers on jet engines. It does not make unreasonable demands of them. They have silencing equipment at their disposal now. But unless government forces them to begin a noise reduction program, it will not be done. So we propose this bill in order to protect our environment from further contamination, not to impede progress. And we welcome those planes that can meet our standards. Now,
it would reduce the substantial dollar earnings which Concorde will make, and thus cut out our orders for American goods, many of which are made by your constituents in New York State, which we buy with those earnings. Secondly, it would arouse such a deep feeling about the injustice done, contrary to the basic principles of reciprocity upon which the American economy has flourished, that there would certainly be demands for retaliation against American goods.
1971 saw British Overseas Airways fly its first jumbo jet. This was the proving flight from London to New York. The 747 duly came into service, but shortly after its inaugural passenger flight, it was grounded for a short time after mechanical failure had caused passengers to be transferred to a VC-10 for one Atlantic crossing. Boeing may have had some teething troubles with its jumbo, but Britain's Rolls-Royce was bankrupted by the cost of developing the RB211 engine, intended for this aircraft, the Lockheed TriStar. Boeing and Lockheed weren't the only major aircraft manufacturers with a new mark that year. McDonnell Douglas introduced the DC-10, which soon overtook the TriStar in numbers sold. If 1971 was a year of achievement in the air, it was also one of achievement at sea. Che Blythe completed the first ever solo voyage round the world in a westerly direction.
That was the transatlantic row that you did with Captain Ridgway. This was obviously a lot tougher.
Well, I think it was a lot harder. First of all, it was very much longer. Secondly, I was on my own. And in bad weather, in a yacht, it's not a case of just sleeping while one man bails out, because you've got the enormous windage problem in a yacht, which you haven't got with our rowing boat. And then, of course, I hadn't any self-steering gear. I think it was a very much harder trip. Well, I think the pattern had already been laid down by Sir Francis, and I think after the round the world race, of my abortive attempt round there, I was keen to go around the world.
As one memorable voyage ended, so another started. John Fairfax and his fiancée set out at the start of their bid to row across the Pacific Ocean to Australia. The Yachtsman of the Year award was presented by newspaper proprietor Max Aitken to Edward Heath, who led the British team to victory in the Admiral's Cup.
Thank you very much, Max, for making this presentation to me tonight. When I was thinking what I should say, I was proposing to open these very few words by saying how proud I was to have been awarded this trophy. It is obvious that after your commendation, with impartiality towards none, which has always been the mark of yourself and your papers, I should now change that to saying it is with considerable humility, though with tremendous delight, that I should receive this award.
1971 was the year in which Princess Anne, who was then 21 years old, established herself as a horsewoman of true international class. She rode doublet to victory in the European three-day event championship at Burghley and was duly presented with her trophy by the Queen. Princess Anne went on to be named Sportswoman of the Year by the British Sports Writers Association, ahead of the world show jumping champion Anne Moore and the tennis player Virginia Wade. In boxing, 1971 was to prove to be the end of an era for Henry Cooper, who defended his British heavyweight title against Joe Bugner.
2 1/4 pound. Very confident, yes. I think, let's face it, every fight goes in the ring confident. If you wasn't confident, you wouldn't be in this game.
Do you really think you're going to come out of this fight tonight British champion?
Yes, I feel very confident indeed.
Bugner won on one of the most controversial points decisions ever, and Cooper retired from the ring. In football, the girls had their moments of glory. In Sicily, Europe's largest active volcano, Mount Etna, erupted for the first time in just over 20 years. Molten lava poured down on the fertile lower slopes, turning the orange and lemon groves into a desert zone and engulfing villages in its terrifying path. Another natural disaster was in San Francisco, where several areas were seriously damaged by an earthquake. Water mains and gas supply lines exploded. Roads were torn apart, and a bridge on the Golden Gate Freeway collapsed. Romance was in the air as Mick Jagger married Bianca. But like any bridegroom, Jagger was just a little tetchy on his wedding day.
I can't do that, Liz. Can you do that, Bianca? Don't you think it's better that they go away? I don't think we can do it in front of you people. No, I love you all. But I don't think we can do it with you people stuck in our face. We just speak French. Mais je veux pas, je veux que tu fasses les photos ici. Comme ça. Mais je veux que après vous avez fait les photos, vous partez.
Oui, le quatrième témoin, s'il vous plaît. Le quatrième témoin qui sera le...
Juste pendant quelques instants.
Oui, Jack.
In English, all I could say is to you, can I talk to the people who are listening, not the people that are taking photographs?
Better stop taking photographs.
While one marriage started, another was ended. Gina Lollobrigida was divorced. A sad day made worse by the Roman traffic cop. Two musical legends died. Louis Armstrong, Satchmo, one of the greatest jazz musicians of all time, had been ill for 3 years. He was loved for the warmth and generosity of his personality, as well as for his genius on the trumpet. The other leading musical figure to die was the Russian-born composer Igor Stravinsky. His operas, ballets, and orchestral works are among the great legacies of modern music. He died in New York and was laid to rest in Venice.
Lot 21, £10,000 started.
It was a year of high prices in the auction rooms. A world record was paid for a Stradivarius violin.
At 80,000, 82,000, 84,000. At 84,000 pounds. Against you in the centre at 84,000. Sold then on my right at 84,000. Against you in the centre. All done at 84,000. At 84,000 then on my right. All done. Hills.
Well, very difficult to sum it up in a few moments, but it's state of preservation. All these corners and edges, which normally get rubbed off and perhaps a bit battered in use, are largely as they left the maker's hands. It's got most of its original varnish left. Most violins lose a lot more than that. And it's in an exceedingly pure and fine state of preservation. It is unique in that respect.
In fashion, it was a year dominated by hot pants, even for weddings. The leading fashion house Dior also tried its hand at nurses' uniforms. For men, designers seem to be hankering after more formality. But not many golfers were seen wearing this outfit. London's Tower Bridge was raised for HMS Belfast. The World War II cruiser made her last voyage to be moored opposite the Tower of London as a floating museum and tourist attraction. For Londoners and tourists, 1971 drew to a close with the traditional autumn opening of Parliament. And those were some of the memories of the year 1971.